All right, everybody. Sunday morning breakfast with the coach live webinar. So hopefully everybody will be getting notice that we are live anytime soon, and I will just wait, and we will get going with part 2 of my lecture on spotting scams and quackery in the fitness, diet, and supplement industries. So we want to get going on that. Things seem to be working on my end, so we'll just wait for everybody to get on board, and hopefully everyone will be seeing me soon. So I see the numbers are a little delayed, coming in good. Let me know you're out there, and let Facebook know you're out there by hitting your share button and getting people involved. Lots of interesting comments and emails last week from part 1, and of course I could only get through the 26 points. I could only get through the first half or so. I got through about 15, and then we will begin the other ones shortly as everything gets going. So just waiting for you guys to get on board. Don't want anyone to miss anything. But good, smart people on board with the comments and things I get in post-production, emails and online, etc. So that's good. I think people are becoming more aware. At the same time, a lot of people are being duped more easily as well. So that's a problem. So we're going to continue. And in the future, I'm not going to do announcements for the live. I'm not going to schedule announcements for going live every week. That seems to be part of the problem with the software that I'm using to bring your comments and everything on board. So hopefully you're all seeing and hearing me okay. Let me know in the comment section, of course, that we are good to go. And then I'll jump on board with continuing part 2 of this lecture, and we'll get going with some interesting stuff on spotting all the scams and quackery, of which there is far too much going on in this industry. And the thing is, it's right in our face. Things like Nutrisystem commercials and Herbalife, and the things I see on TV for Atkins bars now and for South Beach. It's just ridiculous, and it's right in our face, and people aren't noticing. And it's because we're so indoctrinated into the whole way that marketing works that our wish bias is alive and well, even when we think it isn't, even when we think we're guarding against it. So getting people on board, not the usual numbers, but that's okay. We're going to get started here, and I'm sure more people will climb on board as we get going. So I'm going to continue the lecture. So by all means, people, let me know when you can see everything fine. And I'm going to get going with the things I have to say. So hopefully you can see my screen just fine. And then I'm going to get going with the lectures on that. So I continue, and remember this original document by Dr. Stephen Barrett, and I will give you some of the references when I'm finished. I might not get through the whole thing either this week, so it might be 3 parts, but that's okay too. And we'll get going with all of that as well. So hopefully people are seeing and hearing me okay. And I'm going to start the lecture. Can you see, can people see my document just fine, hopefully? And then I'm going to I'm going to do it this way so you can see the document more efficiently. And then I will get to actual reading of the document and try to get through the numbers. So let's get going. So how to spot quacks and scams in the industry. 26 points. There's actually way more. I could keep adding and adding and adding, but we did the first 15 last week, so I'm going to continue right now. Number 16, the promises of quick and dramatic miraculous results. All right, so that's often the promises are subtle or couched in what's known in the industry as weasel words, or often known as buzzwords that create an illusion of a promise. So promoters can deny making these promises when the feds close in. So false promises are of cure are the quack's most immoral practice. They don't seem to care how many people that they break financially or in spirit, by elation over their expected good fortune, followed by deep depression when treatment fails. We see this all the times in things like low carb diets and things that will produce an initial physiological response, followed by the body adopting to that response and getting back to its state of homeostasis. So people go through a honeymoon period of telling themselves the quack cure is working, when all the time it's actually just something that's designed specifically to mislead you that something's working. For instance, if you cut carbs for a few days, you lose a lot of body water, you step on the scale and the scale goes down, you tell yourself that the quack promise is working, when in fact it's designed to do just that, and it's not sustainable and it's not going to last, and you're not losing fat, you're just changing the osmolality of your body. So things like that. And what bothers me about this level of quackery, of course, is the way it turns into an emotional thing where people start blaming and judging themselves as failures. So the quacks don't keep count. They just fill their bank accounts, and how many people they lure away from effective medical care into disability or even death. Because I know so many people that aren't even getting treated, all right, for medical issues, because they go instead to their local health food store or things like that, which is absolutely ridiculous when you have a medical issue that you need to be responding to. So quacks will tell you that mega vitamins, huge doses of vitamins, can prevent or cure many different ailments, particularly emotional ones, and you got to watch out for that. They don't tell you that the evidence supporting such claims is unreliable because it's based in inadequate investigations, anecdotes, testimonials, and nor do quacks inform you that mega doses can be harmful, which I gave you the straight skinny on that a few weeks back. Mega vitamin therapy, also known as orthomolecular therapy. So watch out. That's one of those weasel words. One of those buzzwords is nutritional roulette. And of course, when you gamble, only the house makes money. So very, very important there. Number 17, they routinely sell vitamins and other dietary supplements, in quotes, as part of their professional practice. And although vitamins are useful as therapeutic agents for certain health problems, legitimate health problems, the number of these conditions is infinitesimally small, folks. So practitioners who sell supplements in their offices invariably recommend them inappropriately, and they think that some supplement applies to some client 100% of the time. So you got to watch out for that. In addition, such products tend to be substantially more expensive than similar ones found in drugstores or even health food stores. You should also disregard any publication or website whose editor or publisher sells dietary supplements. And that can be tricky, because a lot of the times these industry websites present themselves as one thing, like your number one place to go for reliable information in the bodybuilding industry, for instance. And really what they are is supplement companies. So, and this was the work that I was involved in decades ago when there was just magazines. We would write advertorials, which were articles that appeared as editorials, but they were actually bent on selling people something by first presenting them with an information bias about training or diet, and then segueing into how supplement X would help them in this regard. So that nothing has changed that way. So you have to keep in mind on that as well. So myself, I get especially disgusted by these quacks who tell you that your sugar addiction is due to this or that vitamin or mineral deficiency. We hear this a lot about chocolate. Chocolate has such and such mineral in it. That's why you crave it, because you're not getting it in your diet. And it's absolutely ridiculous. What's known as circular logic. There's no such thing as a food addiction, which I'm going to get to in a future lecture. These issues are often mental and emotional, not metabolic and nutritional. And shame on these idiots for misleading people otherwise. Where I see the most of this is all these, and I'm just calling it like it is here. There's no bias here, but I see a lot of this nonsense in these bikini champions who have never really had to do anything. to get ready. You know, they do some cardio and they do some lightweight training, but they're just born with the right bone frame and structure, and then they make a good following on Instagram, etc. And lo and behold, they're making claims like this nonsense, and they're selling supplements. So you have to be on guard against that stuff. So very important. So number 18, they use disclaimers couched in pseudo medical jargon. All right. Now, a lot of this pseudo medical jargon you hear all the time, and you just sort of become desensitized to it. But it's time to get resensitized to it. So instead of promising to cure your disease, some quacks are going to promise things like they're going to work on detoxification and purification, and they'll use words like revitalize and energize, or body balance your body chemistry, electromagnetic energy, bringing your body in harmony with its own nature. They'll use terms like stimulate or strengthen your immune system, all right? Or support and rejuvenate various organs of your body, right? Your adrenals, your liver, all right? Unlock your body's healing ability. Look for catchphrases like that. Or stimulate your body's power to heal itself. But of course, your body already has the power to heal itself. It doesn't need the addition of supplements or special diets or, special workout programs. So we did this when we covered the lecture previously on hypervitaminosis and the fact we don't need vitamins. And Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop used a lot of these terms, right? Like revitalize and energize and balance and stimulate. So watch out for those catch terms. They're used on purpose, all right? And they're used with sleight of hand, rabbit in the hat trickery. So copper bracelets, cleanses, and other nonsense. Look for these quackery buzzwords when you land on websites that promise to fix your issues. Of course, they never identify or make valid before and after measurements of any of these processes. So it's not like they're taking analysis of your adrenals or your liver and then they're redoing it 6 weeks later. And even if they are, it's probably the 6 weeks itself that produced a difference. For instance, just in the last 2 weeks, I had a client whose blood work on the stress hormone level was a little out of whack, white blood cells a little out of whack. Person was overstressed, had a cold, goes in, gets blood work 6 weeks later, entirely normal without doing anything. So a lot of the times it's just time that heals the body, and I'll get to that in a few minutes as well. So very important. Now, these disclaimers that the quacks and scammers use, they serve two purposes. First, since it's impossible to measure the processes that quacks talk about in terms of revitalizing and stimulating and healing and all these things, it can be difficult to prove them wrong. And their circular logic argument is, since research can't prove us wrong, then we must be right. And that's just circular logic. So if a quack is not a physician, the use of non-medical terminology can help to avoid prosecution for practicing medicine without a license. So they're very careful about these things, even though practicing medicine without a license is what a lot of them do, and they should be held accountable for that. Because of the DHSEA Act in the 1990s, that's not going to happen very often. So you got to be on the lookout for that. Many marketers of dietary supplements and herbal products use similar language to describe the purposes of their products. When I was with one supplement company back in the day, one of the things we did at our so-called staff meetings or board meetings was to actually work on making up words to use as part of quote-unquote proprietary blends and whatnot in order to sexify any given useless product. So you want to look for that too. You want to make sure that people are they're trying to sexify whatever it is they're selling by using the fact of certain things that actually do have functions in the body and then relating that to their specific product. And I'll get to that down below. So, let me know if you have any comments or questions, and I can still see that. Let me know you can see my notes, and I'll get into it. So some approaches, for instance, to detoxification. Let's talk about that for a minute. They're based on notions that as a result of intestinal stasis, so here's those scientific terms again, intestinal contents can putrefy and toxins are formed and absorbed, which cause chronic poisoning of the body. This auto-intoxication theory was popular around the turn of the century, but was abandoned by scientific community as early as the 1930s. No such toxins have ever been found. All right. And careful observations have shown that individuals in good health will vary greatly in bowel habits. So just because, maybe I go 3 times a day and you go once every 3 days, that doesn't mean I'm not healthy or I am healthy or you're not healthy or you are healthy. All right. Bowel habits vary depending on a lot of stuff with individuals, including their genetics and metabolism. So, remember that. So in terms of detoxification, quacks also suggest that fecal matter collects on the lining of the intestine and causes trouble unless removed by laxatives, colonic irrigation, special diets, of course, cleanses, various herbs and food supplements that will cleanse the body. The falsity of this notion is obvious to doctors who perform intestinal surgery or peer within the large intestine, colonoscopy, etc. Fecal matter does not adhere to the intestinal lining. Once again, showing that your body is a very efficient machine and it doesn't need help. Thank you very much. Here's the other thing, colonic irrigation. Now, I know a lot of really overweight, desperate people who have written me in the past who have gone through this. It just shows their level of desperation and wish bias. But colonic irrigation is done by inserting a tube into the rectum and pumping a whopping 20 gallons of water in and out. Now, this type of enema is not only therapeutically useless, all right, but it can cause fatal electrolyte imbalances in cases of death due to intestinal perforation and infection from contaminated equipment have been reported by people trying to use this level of quackery to purify and detoxify their intestinal lining, and then their metabolism will be more efficient and it'll be easier to lose weight. And you can see where the nonsense goes with that. So very, very important. Number 19, and this one's really important. So they use anecdotes and testimonials to support their claims. Just watch Nutrisystem commercials and all the rest. We all tend to believe what others tell us about personal experiences, but separating cause from effect and coincidence or correlation can be very difficult, especially when you're trying to educate the uninformed and ill-informed consumer. And especially when these consumers already have an emotional wish bias toward wanting to believe in magic cures. All right. If you've been overweight your whole life and nothing has worked, then you're probably going to buy into the next thing that promises to work, and without investigating the science behind whether or not it's even arguing on a rational basis. So people's wish bias tends to be something that they're not conscious of. So they want to believe in magic cures. And this has been around since the dawn of capitalism. It's where the initial term snake oil salesman actually came from. Everyone wants to believe that they're smarter than that. Well, you aren't if you believe in any of this nonsense and level of quackery. So you got to be diligent in watching that. For instance, when I did my whole low carb thing and keto thing, the level of attack that was coming at me, I could have answered every single one of them, but it's not worth the time when people are already fixed in their belief. You're right. You're only preaching to the choir when you do social media like this. I could see from people's arguments that they were so misinformed and ill-informed. For example, a couple people commented on that. Well, I did keto twice, and both times it worked for me, and I lost such and such amount of weight. But if it worked for you, you wouldn't need to do it twice. Why were you doing it twice? You would have stayed on it, because a real diet strategy has to be sustainable, has to serve the body. Other people were talking about things about keto that weren't even keto. And a lot of other times what happens is people give credit to a diet when it's actually them who have tightened up what they're doing. So they go out and they buy supplements, or they go out and they buy into a certain system, and for a little while they honeymoon on it, which means they're more diligent and disciplined about not eating junk, about measuring their portion sizes. And so what they do is they give credit to that diet strategy, whereas in fact, the credit goes to just not eating as much crap and not overeating in portion sizes. So they don't even really know what they're talking about in terms of anecdotal evidence. So you have to watch out. And anecdotal evidence is what allows social media to thrive. Uninformed, ill-informed people who think they're educated after a 10-minute Google search go on social media and rave about this or that product. And we see the example over and over again are people who are drawn to what I call shiny new object syndrome, new vitamin supplement, new diet, new protocol. And we see what's going on Instagram, that the people that are getting, tens of thousands of followers, hundreds of thousands of followers, is because they post shiny new object syndrome constantly. So, ladies who are posting, just pictures of their TNA basically, and they're in the fitness industry, or, guys that are all bloated up on all kinds of drugs, and then they're touting their protein powder and things like that. They've got tens of thousands of followers. All right. And it's based on nothing. So you have to watch out for that. So the example I use here, Cold FX, we sell here in Canada, or you sell in wintry environments where colds and flus are popular. So if you do the research, right on the bottle of Cold FX, it says can take 5 to 7 days to work. And then if you do research on how long it takes a cold to pass on its own, 5 to 7 days. So people are buying into a wish bias, giving credit to a supplement that really has no effect at all. Let's break down fat burners as an example. Here's another good example. Let me just copy that for you and paste that in there. Here's a really, really, really good example about fat burners, all right? So mostly in the fitness industry, what happens is you get uninformed, ill-informed, wannabe competitors in bikini or figure, all right? So they start dieting 16, 20 weeks out, whatever. And then as the contest gets closer, they cut their calories more and more, more and more. And what do? They increase their cardio more and more, more and more. And then after 10, 12 weeks of caloric deprivation and increased activity, they lean out, often taking drugs to do so, like thyroid, clenbuterol, things like that. And yet they'll go on social media and rave about a fat burner. This fat burner had incidental or nil effects, not instrumental or strong effects, but they're so convinced because it's something they were taking along with their caloric deprivation that they end up endorsing something that's based on a mind fuck. So mind screw. So they keep telling themselves that something is working without looking at the bigger picture, that of course, if you keep cutting down calories and carbs over the course of weeks and weeks and weeks, and you never replace that, at the same time, you're increasing your activity level by doing endless, mindless cardio 7 days a week. They go from once a day to twice a day. And in the end, they're raving about some fat burner so they can sell it on their website. Same idea. Anecdotal evidence that has no bearing if you just break it down. So, very, very important stuff. So, and you got to watch for supplement companies that are on the lookout. All right, for people who have a great, massive internet social media following, especially on Instagram. So, someone with a lot of TNA and stuff on Instagram, and then what happens is supplement companies approach them and say, we'll give you product X for free if you just plug it on your social media and your website. And then people think that works because, wow, that person looks wonderful, so it must work. I'm going to try it. What's the harm in trying it? Well, if you get 1,000 people with that attitude and you make $2, then you've just made a lot of money. So, and then now here, I want to speak specifically about what's really bothering me. This is the latest quack nonsense out there. That's really ticking me off because of what it's doing to people out there. And I don't have anything to do with the competitive industry anymore. I really don't give a rat's ass about it. So metabolic repair, all right? This is what all the wannabe contest prep coaches now are using this catchphrase: metabolic repair diets. This is nonsense. This is quackery. I wrote the book on metabolic damage and the dangers of dieting. That's literally the title way back when. So, I wrote the book on that. And let me tell you, what'll happen is these competitors, they'll gain a lot of weight from post-contest rebound, and then they'll look under these things: metabolic fix, metabolic repair, things like that. And then they go online, they hire these people who have no background, no training at all in metabolism, endocrinology. They've never studied it, never written a book about it, nothing. And then 12 weeks later or 6 months later, you'll see them on social media saying, oh, I followed so-and-so's diet protocol and it fixed my metabolism. No, it didn't. Time fixed your metabolism. So their diet had nothing to do with that. Now, I have diets. Obviously, I sell one-time custom program, one-time custom diets. And I never use the term metabolic repair, metabolic fix. I use terms like metabolic reset, metabolic optimization. I use terms like metabolic support and metabolic readjustment. I never use the term metabolic repair or metabolic fix diet because there's no such thing. All you can do is get the metabolism functioning correctly again, and the body's going to do what the body's going to want to do. As I mentioned in a previous video I did a couple of weeks ago when I got letters to the coach, a lot of people want to equate metabolic fix and metabolic repair with weight loss. Your body during metabolic fix and metabolic repair may want to gain weight and may need to gain weight. That may be part of the repair process. But people are so indoctrinated that they think there's something wrong with my metabolism. No, your body's trying to fix itself. Your metabolism's trying to right itself from the ill-advised diet you did to compete. And now you're going through metabolic hell, and weight gain is part of that process. So, but what do people do? They're wish bias. They want to buy into there's a metabolic fix out there. There's a metabolic repair out there for me. And it's absolute nonsense. And it ticks me off royally that these contest prep gurus who have no knowledge in any of this stuff, oh, we're experts on metabolic repair, or you won't get metabolic damage with our diets. It's just absolutely ridiculous. So watch out for, again, this all falls under anecdotal evidence. And the latest commercial for Atkins, have anyone paid attention? See, I pay attention to all this stuff when I watch it. So they're showing Atkins bars and all this stuff, which funny, it's supposed to be a no sugar diet, but all the stuff they advertise on that is sugar-based stuff, like, bars that are based in sugary equivalents like caramel and chocolate and things like that. But one of the statements they make is you don't have to be on Atkins to benefit from its health benefits. That doesn't even make sense. So how is that to make sense? And the newest one that I like, I think it's, I like to hate. I think it's South Beach. If you watch that commercial, it's some bikini bunny talking about how she stays in shape. And during the commercial, the infomercial, they use the quote, sugar is the enemy of protein. That doesn't even make sense. That's not even biochemical. That doesn't even make biochemical sense. In fact, what happens is if you know about protein sparing calories, sugars can actually be a benefit to protein by sparing protein to be used for what it's supposed to be used for, which is to build and rebuild tissue. So that statement, sugar is the enemy of protein, doesn't make sense. But what does it do? It sticks in the misinformed consumer's mind. So, and one of the other latest ones I've heard is you don't have to be in ketosis to be on a keto diet. How does that make sense? It's called a keto diet for a reason. It's all about ketosis. And, of course, you already know what I think of that, which is it's ridiculous to begin with. So very, very important. So there's some good comments coming in. Yeah, really good comments coming in. If you want to hold off, folks, I'll post them all when I get to the end of this. So very, very important, this stuff, and I hope it's resonating. Please hit your share button. So if you tell people that product X has cured their cancer or arthritis or whatever, be skeptical if people tell you things like that, or fix their metabolism, or cured their flu or anything like that. They may not have actually had the condition they're talking about to begin with. A lot of people self-diagnose. If they did have this condition, the recovery most likely would have occurred without the help of product X that they're raving about. Most single episodes of disease end with just the passage of time, like I'm saying, and most chronic ailments have symptom-free periods as well. There's periods, I've got osteoarthritis in my shoulders. There's times when it feels pretty damn good and I'm not doing anything different. And then there's times where the shoulders are pretty damn stiff and I'm not doing anything different. So the difference is I'm informed enough to not fall for some kind of scam. So when those periods happen, I'm not saying that some magic vitamin or some magic herb or some magic supplement suddenly reduced the inflammation in my joints. We saw that a lot in the 90s with all the hype on fish oils, right? It was reducing inflammation. It was doing this and that. And then, of course, research follows up later, as it always does, and sort of debunked all of that nonsense. So great comments coming in. I'm going to get to them at the bottom. So now, in terms of anecdotal evidence, here's what you need to know. This is why testimonial evidence is forbidden in scientific articles and is usually inadmissible in court and is not used to evaluate whether or not drugs should be legally marketable. And yet in the supplement and diet industry and fitness industry, it's the exact opposite, where testimonials are all that matter, often by misinformed consumers who have no idea what's really going on. Remember what I've told you. I was at the top of that industry for decades, and I got really good paychecks from supplement companies. And you know what my job was? It was to do before and after diets and training for all the people who would later endorse those supplements. And yet none of my clients usually even took those supplements, not the protein powders, not the fat burners, none of it. They relied, their before and afters were entirely based upon what I did with their diet and their training over the course of 12 weeks. And then they come on with a testimonial and give all the credit to product X. All right. And I did that for years, and I was paid well to do it. So very important. So in the supplement and diet industry, it's the exact opposite, where testimonials are all that matter. And so you go on Instagram and you watch these idiots who aren't educated, they're not informed, they follow the herd, and they talk like they know what's going on, and they use this product, that product, this product, that product, and they have no idea what they're talking about. So let's reverse that for a minute. Imagine what would happen. It is wish bias, Sherry. I'll get to that. So imagine what would happen if the FDA decided that clinical trials were just too expensive, and therefore drug approval would be based on testimonial letters or interviews with a few patients, or how many likes and followers hucksters have on social media. I mean, if that was the case, then Kevin Trudeau would be a leading health practitioner instead of serving 10 years in jail. So imagine if the supplement and diet industry couldn't rely on anecdotal testimonial evidence and had to have clinical trials for their products and have approval based on tight government regulations and agencies that studied their claims. The supplement industry would collapse on itself. So very, very important stuff. And I hope everybody understands that, because if you're following this industry, you're probably not understanding that. And that's very, very important. So I'm just going to post that, because I'll take modern medicine over alternative supplement quackery every time. And don't forget, I was an insider. So I don't have anything to gain here. I'm not selling you an alternative. I'm selling expertise. So it's unfortunate that, and it's funny, like last week for a completely different reason, I watched the documentary Generation Iron. I have a lot of problems with that to begin with. But it was funny because I remember I want to change my whole logo now. Instead of physical, mental, emotional, I just want to say Scott Abel Fitness, physique transformation and weight loss for sane people. Because all I see out there is making me want to shout, stop the insanity. I mean, it's just ridiculous out there. Who gets a following, what they have to say, what it's based on. It takes smart people to see through all that, I guess, because in the modern social media world, it's shiny new object syndrome. And it's whatever you can sexify, that's what people will buy. So very important stuff. That's why I bring it to you, and it's frustrating, and that's why I bring it to you with a frustrated tone, because that's the level of things that are going on out there. So anecdotes, report of individual experiences, occasionally provide suggestions about what might be worth studying. And as one commentator on a blog said recently, anecdotes are how you start research, not how you finish it. So it's not about testimonials on a keto diet website where, everyone is sort of like, this is the crowd mindset, the crowd mentality, the tribe mentality. And I'll get to that as well. So you got to never underestimate the extent to which people can be fooled by a worthless remedy. That is why snake oil salesman has been around since the dawn of commodification and making money by profiting from other people. During the 1940s, thousands of people became convinced that glyoxolide could cure cancer, yet analysis showed that it was simply distilled water. So if that was around today, there would be some website and a whole huge social media following going on and on about glyoxolide, which of course is a made-up word, like I warned you about earlier. All right, and yet it was just distilled water. So people think they're smarter than that these days, but they're not. So many years before that, when arsenic was actually once used as a tonic, and countless numbers of people swore by it, even as it poisoned them. Their hair were falling out, their nails were brittle and falling off, and yet they were swearing by this tonic that was otherwise preventing them from dying, even though it was slowly poisoning them. So in other words, snake oil magic cure scammers, they've been around forever and always will be, as long as there's a sucker born every minute, all right, and the fitness industry is ripe with a sucker born every minute. As consumers. See, the thing is, people want to buy into their identities. So they take up fitness, they take up weight loss, they take up Weight Watchers, and they want to buy stuff to say, I'm one of them, I'm one of this tribe. I see it all the time with t-shirts and things like that, wherever you go. So people want to, they want you to know that they're one of you, they're a member. And that's how this stuff is able to perpetuate itself. Symptoms that are psychosomatic, body reactions to tension, are often relieved by anything taken with a suggestion that it'll work. In other words, quacks don't sell the steak, they sell the sizzle. All right. And you have to remember that. How many times have I said that in these lectures? So you got to remember that and look for what they're saying. Like I said earlier, making statements like sugar is the enemy of protein. That doesn't even make biochemical hormonal sense. Doesn't even make metabolic sense. It's a ridiculous statement, but because the DHSEA, they're allowed to go on televised, paid for commercial advertising and make a statement that is completely bereft of scientific fact. All right. And you should be mad about that because it's misleading hundreds of thousands of people. So very, very important. So tiredness, other minor aches and pains can respond to any enthusiastically recommended solution. So all you need is someone out there pumping up a product, selling the sizzle. And for these problems, a lot of physicians will even prescribe placebos. So you have to keep in mind a placebo, a substance with no pharmacological effect on the condition for which it is used, but is given to satisfy a patient who supposes it to be medicine. For instance, B12 shots are commonly used this way. And unless you're a strict vegan, you don't need B12 shots. But again, the Bernstein, in Canada, the Bernstein weight loss diet comes to mind because their catchphrase is medically supervised diets. And then they have people in nurses outfits, and you go in and you get a B12 shot along with your 500 to 800 calorie per day diet. And somehow that's supposed to, enrich the dieting experience. But what it really does is it offsets, it prolongs the risk of anemia so that the Bernstein Clinic can't be sued, because if you are anemic from a diet, then you can probably sue the perpetrator of that diet, or at least you should be able to. So this will prolong that to a point where people are probably off the diet and no longer following it anyway. And that offsets legal, lawsuits and things like that. So placebos, of course, act by suggestion. Unfortunately, some doctors swallow their advertising hype and become confused by their own observations and believe in vitamins beyond those supplied by a good diet. Those who share such false beliefs do so because they confuse coincidence or placebo action with cause and effect. Homeopathic believers make the same error. The whole premise of homeopathy is ridiculous. And that's going to require a separate lecture. That's going to bother a few people, but homeopathy makes no sense. I tried to find it. There was a really good documentary on some magician from a long time ago, and it was sort of a biography, and he was, exposing magic tricks and things like that. But he begins his lecture, he talks about health frauds and things like that. It was on Netflix. It's not on there anymore. I checked, but it's funny. He starts one of his appearances. He swallows a whole bottle of homeopathic sleep med. All right. And then he says, don't worry about it. There's an ambulance nearby if I fall asleep. And he made the whole point, like how ridiculous homeopathic is in terms of a scientific argument. So I'll get to that another time. But that was good that I saw that in other people who understand this stuff. So another element of quackery and scams is the claim that sugar is some kind of deadly poison. Okay. This one especially prominent in the fitness industry. Many vitamin pushers would have us believe that refined sugar is the killer on the breakfast table and is the underlying cause of everything from heart disease to hypoglycemia. But the fact is, when sugar is used in moderation as part of a normal balanced diet, again, whole foods, unprocessed foods, it's a perfectly safe source of energy and eating pleasure. So it depends where you take this. If you have a sugar-based diet, as in refined white sugar, then yeah, it's problematic. But in general, making you fear this doesn't make sense, because sugar is not the enemy of protein. Sugar comes in many forms, from polysaccharides to disaccharides to monosaccharides. So I get a lot of, when I was in the competition industry, one of the big secrets was that so-and-so's trainees, they ate sugar-free ketchup as if this was some big, leap in keeping sugar out of the diet. But the amount of sugar in ketchup or in a condiment isn't enough sugar to amount to anything consequential. So only the manufacturers profit from making it. So this is, again, one of this misleading of consumers. Sugar is a factor in tooth decay. Sugar can be a factor in diabetes, of course, and heart disease, of course. But what counts is how long any digestible carbohydrate is digested in contact with the teeth in terms of dental health, but also the length of the polysaccharide chain and things like that. So a sugar isn't a sugar isn't a sugar. And this is where we get lost in the nonsense of keto diets and Atkins and the rest of this nonsense that misrepresents what it should be. You know what? I'm going to stop there because I want to get to the comments, because there's some really, really good comments here, and I want to get to them and share some of them, and I missed some of them. So let me get to what we're saying here. Yeah, Degust is making a lot of good points here. The stupider the things you tell on the web, the greater your following gets. And that's a frustrating thing for an expert like myself. That these people have been around for all of 10 minutes, don't have a clue what they're talking about. They look good. Maybe they talk good. I don't know. But I know complete buffoons and imbeciles who I've trained, who have a massive following on Instagram, who say stupid things like load up one end of the bar for bench press, but leave the other end empty. And somehow that's doing some kind of magical thing. And of course, all these neophytes, they jump on the most advanced principles without realizing that you've got to start with the basics before you even consider advanced, right? I'm not going to do PhD level algebra if I've never done it at a grade school level. And yet people are tuning in to watch these mass monsters online. One of the problems, let me just go offside here a little bit, watching Generation Iron, and there were a few intelligent people on there like Lee Haney and Sean Ray made some good points, but following around these freaks without showing them injecting themselves several times a day is actually misleading the consumer. And it bothered me that they weren't showing that. I remember back in the day when I was training hardcore guys, I went to the gym once with a really well-known guy. He wasn't a champion by any means, but he was a big mass monster, mostly because he took 10 times the amount of drugs of everyone else, and he's dead now. But we're walking down the gym floor at Gold's Gym there was a big long aisleway from the front doors to the change rooms in the back. And as we're walking toward the change rooms, he's got a towel on his back, and I hear click, 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 click. And I look down, and like 6 insulin needles fall out of his towel. What he was doing, injecting 6 times during a workout, I have no idea. But I was embarrassed. And I think when they show Generation Iron, and they only talk about the drug use, but they don't show it, you don't get to know the level of the drug subculture if you're not seeing it. So to do a documentary like that and then not actually show these guys injecting themselves, where they're injecting themselves, how much stuff is in the needle, how many times per day, you don't get the full effects of the drug subculture dependency. And I think that's a shame in presenting a documentary like that. And it's too bad it came out before the one of the main protagonists in that documentary died. It would have had a whole different effect had they at least been able to say at the end, by the way, this guy died recently. That would have changed the dynamic, I think. So Andy's just saying, I don't think the masses actually realize how many drugs some of their favorite fitness social media personalities are on. Their physiques are a result of polypharmaceutical abuse, not proper exercise programming and sound dietary practices. I mean, amen to that. Obviously, Andy's going to feel that way because he's with me and he's been schooled with me for over a decade. But this is why I want to change my whole logo. Scott Abel training, fitness, weight loss, and physique transformation for sane people. The fact that these idiots have 1 million followers boggles my mind. What do you have in common with these people? If you're a natural trainee out there with average genetics, what do you have in common with someone who's spending $3 or $4 grand a month on drugs and who's going on and pontificating about this training or that supplement? It makes no sense. Smarten up, Buttercup. I mean, I don't get why people just are that stupid. But people want leaders. They want followers. But unfortunately, with Instagram and all these other things, what they get is shiny new object syndrome. So, people, they want to seem to follow the sizzle and not the steak, because the principles, guess what? The principles in diet, exercise, in the amount of nutrition that you need and you don't need from bottles and boxes and supplements, it's not sexy enough. So people, like I said, they literally want to buy into. It's amazing when I'm in, I'll give you another example of the sort of I call it bi-identity. When I go to Aruba, this year in Aruba, there was this stand right on the beach, and it advertised, there was some kind of like ice cream, whipped cream kind of protein thing. And then they could advertise how wholesome it was because they would put sliced bananas in it and blackberries and raspberries. And therefore it was healthy and nutritious and all this stuff. And I did because I'm a sociologist by trade, on my education in sociology, I did a quick assessment of the people who were standing around there, because on the other side of it was a Dunkin' Donuts. And all the people who lined up for this stuff, they all had their fitness wear on, right? They're showing up in tights and they're showing up with their Under Armour. And some would say it's squat day. And some, they're just lined up for the identity, right? They're just lined up to me. I'm on vacation. I show up with a big, long, oversized T-shirt that says this guy wants a beer. And I walked right past that and went to Dunkin' Donuts. So you'll see how the wannabe crowd that want to be part of something, they don't care about the legitimacy. But as an expert, I have to care about the legitimacy, and that's a problem. So, let me just go through. Sorry, I'm catching up on all your comments. So, wish bias is definitely a factor in all of this. So another Degus comment. A client bragging that she lost 13 kilos in 12 weeks. You have to watch out for fast weight loss. That's never a good sign down the road. Eating 1,100 calories. And when he asked her what she expected to weigh in 12 months, she got furious and told me that his diet worked too slow and was too easy. Yes, the slow food diet. Yep. No, that's I'm with you on that one. But again, this signifies the unsexy element and the honeymoon period of nonsense, right? So this person, DeGust, you're right. In 12 months, she will have gained all that weight back. No question about it. You know that, and I know that. But until they're ready to hear that message, it'll fall on deaf ears, and so that's unfortunate. So Julie's just saying, yeah, trying to convince a woman she needs to gain weight. First, in my experience, that pushes them harder toward the quackery. I don't try to convince them they need to gain weight. When they write me, what I tell them is, because they'll go on about, can you fix my metabolism? Can you repair my metabolism? Because I'm still following my diet and I'm gaining weight. And I'm saying, I don't tell them they need to gain weight. I'm telling them this is your body repairing itself. It's just because it's not doing what you want it to do and what you think it should do. But this is what your body is actually needing to do in order to repair itself. And if you get in the way of that, you make it worse, not better. So ladies who could have stopped the damage at 25, 30 pounds end up gaining 40 or 50 pounds because they try to diet their way out of it. And like I always say, and I'm going to write this down, so give me 1 second here because you need to read this. You don't diet your way out of a problem that you dieted your way into. All right. So very, very important. Remember that you don't diet your way out of a problem that you dieted your way into. And no one wants to accept that. All right. They want to think, oh, I dieted for a show. Now I'm gaining weight. There's a fix out there. I'll just do a Google search, metabolic repair, metabolic fix. There's some idiot out there, especially contest preps now. That's how they get clients to stay with them, even though they're the ones responsible for their clients gaining all that weight. So yeah, very, very important. And DeGust is also, I'm not going to show this comment, DeGust, because I don't want to get into battles with other tribes. It's fruitless, but he's just saying 20 years ago, he did a keto diet from an online guy who's well known for keto nonsense, which is funny. This guy talks about bodybuilding and he's a pencil with a head. He's never had a physique in his life, but somehow he's a physique development expert who advocates a keto diet. So two things that tell you he's never been there, done that. And DeGust is just saying he tried his keto diet and never felt so weak, lost mass, didn't lose any fat. I mean, I get letters like that every week. And so it goes. And the problem is those people can produce research. It's the unfortunate thing there. It's the wrong kind of research. It's not cross-cultural studies. It's not meta-analysis. It's short-term usually. And I can give you a short-term diet on anything and show it'll work. So very, very important there. So yeah, and then there's, of course, there's a whole new thing now if you're following a certain diet like keto. Ange is just saying here, yeah, you can get keto flu. This is the new buzzword if you're on a keto diet, but don't worry about it. If you're feeling what DeGust just said, you're weak and you're irritable and you feel like you got, like you're sick. That's the keto flu, and just give your body time to adapt to it. Oh, but by the way, here's 5 to 10 to 15 vitamins you can take. Like I said with Atkins, who initially said to do his diet right, you need upwards of 60 vitamins, which makes absolutely no sense at all. So again, very, very important stuff. And very, very important that people start understanding and seeing this stuff and seeing it for what it is. And then Anne seems to be all over this stuff today. I don't know what happened there, folks. Hopefully you've all got me back here. Can't tell. In the last 24 hours in the news, problem with 16-year-old boys taking steroids as they're looking up to these wannabe fitness models. Yeah, and that's, I'm not surprised there. Sherry just saying the contest reverse dieting. Yeah, how many times I have to hear about that? Slap a label on it, call it something else. Very, very ridiculous stuff. Now back to the 16-year-olds taking steroids. One of the things about watching that documentary, I was watching it for another reason because I wanted to see if they actually would show drug use to the level that I know and I've seen and I've done. And I wanted to see if they would be honest about it, which they weren't. But even this new classic physique, one of the other protagonists in this documentary wasn't just the guy that died. It was some guy with good model looks like Andy, but totally blown up on steroids. So what's the difference now? What's the level of what? The guys who spend only $3,000 a month on drugs, they can do classic physique, but the guys who spend $6,000 a month, they're actual hardcore bodybuilders. It makes no sense to me. It makes it just absolutely ridiculous. And I wish some of the insiders would have just been a little more forthcoming about things. It would have made that documentary. It wasn't really an honest documentary because it was trying to show that this is a subculture, but it's pretty cool to the people that follow it. And, let's get real. So, well, you know what? I shouldn't address this, but I will. Monica's saying, what I'm wondering, how do these guys and gals afford all those drugs and the lifestyle they show online? Okay, so a few have sponsors. So let's rule them out right now. Now, a lot of people don't want to hear what I'm about to say, but here's the truth. Most of the contest prep gurus out there on the hardcore end, whether it's figure or bodybuilding, are glorified drug dealers. Basically, they tell their clients, look, if you want to compete at this level, this is what's going on. You need to take this drug, this drug, this drug, this drug. I mean, I had a bikini competitor write me who was taking thyroid, clenbuterol, Anavar, and growth hormone. That's 4 things for bikini for someone who weighs just over 100 pounds. So what happens is these contest prep gurus, they explain the reality, which is true. It's not a lie. It's saying if you want to compete at this level, look, here's what's going on. And of course, it's more for the bodybuilders, right? They have a whole litany of steroids and other things. Oh, but you know what? Don't worry about getting it because I can get it for you. So really, this is how they make their income. They charge their monthly fee or whatever, but on the side, they're actually selling lots of steroids and all the things that their competitor needs to compete, right up to and including diuretics. So, I wasn't going to include that, but this is what people need to know, because these people at this level, they can't have a job. They can't work 8 hours somewhere and then coach, 30, 40 people online. So they have to offset their income, because most of these people, which I always found ironic, are also competitors, right? So they're trying to pay for their own drug stacks, like Monica just asked about. And they do that by selling drugs themselves. So it's a no-brainer, really, on how they're supporting themselves and doing that so that they can train twice a day. But really, if someone is still competing, why would you want them as a coach? Because really, their number one priority by saying they're a competitor is to look after themselves, not look after you. And that never made sense to me, but all right, whatever. No, I don't agree with that one. DeGus is just saying they won't show the drug use because they know it'll be called marginal. I don't think that anymore. I think people know what's going on, but it's not as impactful if it's not visual. I think they need to see it. They need to see these guys injecting big 3cc, 5cc needles along with insulin darts that go right into their muscles and things like that. I mean, I watched the one guy in Generation Iron Training, and his big bloated cartoonish muscles, and some of the muscles, they weren't even moving. He was doing a tricep exercise and his triceps weren't moving. They weren't doing anything because they were so full probably of various drugs and stuff that they wouldn't even move. So how that, and then he's out walking Muscle Beach and everyone wants his picture. I don't get it. But again, that's because, this is the stuff that I follow. So very important, this is the level of quackery and everything else. I think, Tony, I'll get to that. Let's have another live lecture just on that. I don't mind sharing my involvement in all of that, but I think I can't just touch on that. I think that has to be a lecture in and of itself. Someone did send me when I did that video several weeks ago, and I kind of lost my composure there when those guys died. People were sending me the actual, drug stacks of the modern era, and it blew my mind, and I thought I'd seen everything. So very, very important. And then Kathy's just saying, I hope people learn something from the deaths of Rich Piana and Dallas McCarver. No, they don't, because I'll tell you, Kathy, these deaths have been happening in bodybuilding for years and years and years. I talked about that previously in some of the shows I did, the people that I know in my circle that died or killed themselves or ruined their lives. But the problem there, Kathy, especially now with Instagram and everything, is 3 years from now, the new batch of people won't even know who Rich Piana was. It won't be a cautionary tale. It'll just be, there was a guy who made a lot of money, in bodybuilding, and he was a freak. Back then when I was doing research for those guys that died, I ended up on a YouTube channel of some guy with a good following who's posting like videos of bodybuilders who have died, and he's commenting how great their physiques were and stuff. And I'm like, why not comment that this guy died before he was 50? Instead of saying how wonderful his physique was, maybe say that wonderful physique cost him his life. And I don't get that. And then all these wonderful responses and things like that. So, and then Andy, of course, showing his intelligence again. There's a big fad right now to make high protein desserts. Marketers push these recipes with the notion you can enjoy them indiscriminately and creating fear with traditionally prepared real desserts. Yeah, I see that all the time. And people will write me and say, hey, can I have this? It's like I said, that one in Aruba, it was basically, some form of whipped cream, and you put a banana and some chopped berries in it, and it's a healthy, breakfast. So just like those commercials for Nutella used to be part of a nutritious breakfast, but that's because they showed milk, whole grains, and orange juice in the shot. So you got to look out for this stuff, folks. This is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. So very, very important. And so hopefully you're hitting your share button. I will finish this lecture next week, and I'm always open to you guys telling me about what topics you want me to discuss. I'll try to keep open as I can, but of course you're going to get my opinion. That's why I'm here. So agree with it, don't agree with it, comment on it, whatever. And by all means, give me a subject matter you want me to address. I'm not always going to do the research stuff. I think there's other things we can talk about, like the diet psychology, inspiration, motivation for physique transformation, discipline, things like that. So that's my hour for today. I appreciate the smart commentary. Very, very important as well. So I'm glad that intelligent people join me here. And again, this is the place for sane people. So, I may not have 200,000 followers, and I think it's a shame that that's where the internet has gone, starting with the Kardashians, but that's where we're at. Talentless twits who get all the following because they know how to sell you shiny new objects. And that's on you, not them. So that's important stuff. So that's it for me today. I'm going to get at it. And I hope you all learned something or benefited from something. I will see you next week. We'll finish this one up on scams, etc. Hit your share button, get people tuning in, because the more people that are on here, the better. I like being here. The more people I can try to reach, and I think that's important in this day and age. So, Monica, if you want to hold that till next week, and maybe you can start just copy and hold on to that comment somewhere, and then next week I will begin with that comment. So glad people are participating. Glad I can throw that up on the screen. Glad you guys can see it and share my frustration with the level of nonsense that's out there. Let's spot scams and quackery as they come in. And this is a safe place for people to land. So I will see you all next week. And thanks for being out there, because if you weren't out there, wouldn't make much sense for me being in here. So till next time.